Good morning. I wanted to do something a little different today. So I'm going to do a night scene from my memory of New York City when I was 14, 15, 16, those years. So here's the painting. And I guess you could say I did it differently than I normally do. I experimented a little bit. I loved yesterday's painting because it had all these colors and it was maybe more colorful than I normally do. I don't know why. I don't know what happened that caused me to suddenly pick colors. But when I looked at it, it was, in fact, if you didn't see yesterday's video, this was the painting from yesterday. And you can see it's very colorful and it's very rural. And it's a place not too far from here that I love. And I live here in Central Florida. And I love it here. But you know, when I was a kid, I lived outside of New York City. And when I was 14 years old, I discovered that you could go into the city if you had enough money for the train. And I had a job. I worked at a church. I helped the custodian, clean the blackboards, sweep the floors, set up the chairs. And back in those days, you can imagine, 14 years old, you discover a game room. That's what I want to tell you about. I want to tell you about the game room in New York City. But this is the painting I'm going to do as I tell you about it. And kind of like that purple sky. Now that I'm looking at it in the camera, it's a little more purple than I think I didn't realize I did it so purple. Is it the camera doing that? I don't know. I guess it's just that purple. All right, let me show you how I painted that. Here we go. Good morning again. Well, I somehow didn't record everything as I was recording the video. The audio just didn't record. Not sure what I did wrong. So I'm narrating now, after the fact. And I'll try to remember what I might have said as the recording was going. So the only difference really today is you won't be hearing the sound of the brush and the clinking of the brush on the jar that I hold the water in. So there you are. There you have the colors and the palette. And basically, it's gouache, first of all. And I have the blue, the yellow, and the red. Kind of a variation, not pure yellow, not bright yellow. Although later on I used the yellow. Oh, and I wanted to show you the disposable palette that I used in this one and in a couple of other ones. It's just basically like a piece of wax paper, I guess, that you could use to use as a palette. So that's what I do. So I'm at this point just telling you. So I have the three primary colors and the white, and then that's purple. It's called mauve on the label, but I call it purple. And then later on, I do add some black to the painting, and I do add some, and of course there's white, and I think I also added like a lemon yellow. So, and I decidedly, by the way, wanted to do this inspired, if you will, the style by Leonid Afremov. Do you know him? Leonid Afremov was an artist. He was born the same year I was born, 1955, but he passed away in 2019. And very famous artist, contemporary artist, because he's one of those guys that lived in my lifetime and probably yours if you're born before 2019. He was a Russian-Israeli painter. I'm getting this off of Wikipedia. He specialized in vibrant, colorful, impressionistic works. those three words right there. Vibrant, colorful, impressionistic. So that was my goal in painting a picture of New York City at night from my memory and just trying to do it in the style of Leonid Afremov. If you want to look him up, by the way, his first name is spelled Leonid, and his last name is Afremov. And there are videos on YouTube that you can watch where you see him working. And by the way, he worked with a palette knife. I don't know if he ever used a brush. Every painting I've seen, every video I've seen of him painting was with a palette knife. And he's just very good. I'm going to say genius. I don't know if that's the right word ever, because genius is used for so many things, but you could say genius. Why not? And he did all these beautiful paintings, and I'm sure he's influenced others, but I've never tried to emulate him. I've never tried to, as they say, channel Leonid Afremov. So this is my attempt to try it. In fact, before I turned on the camera, I was thinking maybe I should do this on a canvas. Maybe I should use acrylics. And maybe I even have some oil paint in the garage. I'm not sure if I do or not, but for the interest of time, I thought, well, let me just do a greeting card. I don't know who this one would go to. This one would go to me. Maybe this is a card to myself, because I do have some fond memories of New York City. I know New York City is hated and loved. I myself have a mixed feelings about New York City as it is now. But I'll tell you about when I was 14. So when I was 14, let me back up before that. My father worked in New York City. My parents met in New York City. My mother worked at ADT, which was just a very new business at that time. I think it was on 7th Avenue, I'm not sure. And my father got a job there. And from what my mother would say, he was a flirt. My mother would say that he would flirt with all the ladies. I can imagine that. My dad was a good-looking guy. Yeah. My mother was a beautiful lady too, so they were like, probably the talk of the office. But anyway, apparently my dad flirted with all of the ladies, including my mom. But, she made her mind up that she wanted him to be her guy. And it's simple and sweet, and you often wonder about things. I mean, these are the two people that got together that eventually created me, of course, with God's help. But they were the instruments of God to make the person I am, not just physically, but they raised me, and so much that they gave me in my upbringing is who I am today. So anyway, he was, World War II was happening, and he went into the army. He enlisted, and he became a tank driver. And my mother would write to him all the time, and he would send her letters also. In fact, he sent her some photographs, which I still have to this day. And the photographs have a piece cut out of them because he would pose by his tank, and sometimes there would be a woman in the picture, and the army would cut it out. So when he got home, and after the war, my mother asked him, what's with the photos that have pieces cut out of them? And he said, what? He didn't know. And so she showed him, and he said, I have no idea, other than maybe because there was a woman standing there. Maybe they didn't want you to see that I was standing with a woman. It's kind of funny. He must have been 18 at that time, and so was she. So now fast forward to me and my brothers and my sister. So after the war, my father had a series of jobs. I think he worked for a watch store making wristwatches, or I think in his case he was cleaning wristwatches. And then he eventually got a job with the New York City Police Department. And he worked in the Bronx, and he had a foot beat, as they say. He directed traffic, and he had a couple of neighborhoods that he was responsible for patrolling on foot. And so he was directing traffic outside of Yankee Stadium in 1962. So he started working in 1952. So by 62, he was already in the police department for 10 years. And he was directing traffic outside of Yankee Stadium, and he got hit by a car. And he was injured. I don't know, I don't remember, because I would have only been 7 years old. But I've heard this story so many times in my life. But it was that accident that was a blessing in disguise. Because from 1962 until he retired in 1972, my father worked a desk job. He no longer was on the street because of his injury. And the desk job he did was in communications, or dispatch, if you will. And the location where he worked was on Center Street, which is down near Chinatown, if you know where that is, and Little Italy. It's down in that area. And the building is still there. And the building still says New York City Police, I think. Says something to identify it. So I'll tell you more about that in a second if I remember. But I wanted to get to 1969, so before my dad retired. 1969, I was 14 years old. And as I mentioned earlier, I had a job in a church helping a custodian, basically just on Sundays and Saturdays, setting up and taking down chairs, cleaning blackboards, sweeping the floor, mowing the grass, shoveling the snow, whatever there was to do, putting, polish on the pews. They had this wax that we used to put on the pews, and just things like that, changing light bulbs, just all kinds of stuff. And I think I made $40 a week. I think. Now, $40 a week, 1969, it's not bad. It's not bad for a 14-year-old kid. Well, there was a game room in New York City, right in Times Square. It was called Playland. And I knew about this place because every year my mom and dad would take us to the Thanksgiving parade, the parade that Macy's puts on. And we would stand on 59th, I think that was the street. And we'd watch the parade just south of Central Park. And the parade would go past us, and it was an annual event for us. And then we'd go to Radio City Music Hall, and we'd go eat at a place called an Automat, which was Horn and Hardart, if you remember that name. Basically, if you don't know what it is, it's gone. It's not there anymore. But it was a place where you could buy a sandwich or a piece of pie or something, and the little window opened up. I think it was a nickel. I don't really know how much it was, but it was a very cheap meal, and you basically put the money in, and there would be ladies on the other side of the wall, and they would be putting sandwiches into the little spaces, and then when you put your money in, you could open the door and you could grab a sandwich, and that's how it was. So that was in Times Square. I think that, by the way, I think that was, do you know where the red steps are in Times Square? Gosh, I think there's a little place called Finn or something right there. I don't know if it's still there, but anyway, I think that's where Horn and Hardart was. If you know, you can correct me, because I'm not really sure. But anyway, I also know that there was a game room there. Now, my dad and mom never took us into the game room, not because anything was wrong with it or immoral or indecent about it. It was nothing like that. We just didn't go there because we had our whole day planned. We saw the parade, we'd go eat, we'd go to see the Rockettes at Radio City Music Hall, and I would see a movie, and then we would drive out of the city up to Connecticut, where my mother's brother, my uncle, his wife and his family were, and I used to love going there. They had Thanksgiving dinner every year up in Connecticut. That's a beautiful place too, by the way. The town was Milford. Milford. And Milford is the home of the Subway Sandwich Company, I think. Pretty sure. Anyway, so that was way back when I was much younger. So by the time I was 14, getting back to that part of this story, by the time I was 14, I was, had money, because I had that $40. I probably spent most of it on who knows what I bought. But I know I bought a lot of records back in those days. I was really interested in music, and I bought a lot of records. And I probably bought some, do you remember, I don't know if they still do this, but albums used to always have like a book you could buy, and the book would have all the songs from the album, so you could teach yourself how to play the songs on like, let's say, let me think, the Beatles were one. I bought a whole book of Beatles songs. I think I had Crosby, Stills and Nash. I think I had a book by them, and Cat Stevens had a book by him. Songs by them. Anyway, so that's where my money went. But then I discovered, or just had this idea, I could go into the city on my own. I'm 14. What the heck? What am I waiting for? So I got on the Long Island Railroad, and I would take the train into Manhattan, and I would always get off at Penn Station and go upstairs onto the street level and go over to the game room. It was called Playland. And in the game room, if you're young, you probably are picturing video games. But there were no video games. No, that didn't exist yet. So what was in there was pinball. I loved the pinball machines. I was not that good at it, but I would play them. And then there was skeet ball. When I say I wasn't good at it, I mean, I'm comparing myself to my friends, because my friends were really good. Seems like anything that was sports-like was not my forte. Even back then, I was more of an artist. I was more interested in art. I was more interested in music. Talking about football was not my thing. Talking about baseball, everybody talked about baseball in New York, and it just wasn't something that interested me. To me, it was more interesting to see, how does that artist do that? How does that artist take a brush and some colors, some paint, and make that picture? How do they do that? So I was always interested in the thing I'm still doing to this day. And then with the music, I was always interested in, again, how do they do that? How do they make that sound? How do they write that song, those words? And I remember going to the library with the intent of finding a book of how to write songs, and there were none. Now there are lots of them, but back then I couldn't find one. So anyway, I'd go to the game room in New York City, and I'd go with my friends, and we'd play the games, and we only had so much money. So if I ran out of money, which I never really ran out, I always had to have some money so I could get back home. That's the funny part. I couldn't spend it all. Had to hold on to a little bit just to get back on the train. And by the way, going into the city was not something I was allowed to do. So I was always afraid I was going to bump into my father because he worked in the city. So, but anyway, when I ran out of money, I would often walk from Times Square up to Central Park. And there was a zoo there. There's still a zoo there. The Central Park Zoo. And there was a carousel there, which is still there, I think. And there was a polar bear at the zoo that you could see without going into the zoo. I don't think I ever went into the zoo. I feel like they had some animals outside, like at the entrance or in the walkway to the entrance. It's a big blank for me, but I remember the polar bear. I don't remember his name, but I remember the polar bear. Somebody told me his name was Snowflake, but I don't think so. I think there was a polar bear later on named Snowflake, but I'm talking about 1969, 1970. So if you have any information, I'd like to know if it was Snowflake or if that was just a name of a different polar bear. But anyway, so I would do that. And then there was also in Times Square a camera store, a photo store, and they sold cameras and movie cameras and movie projectors, and I was always interested in that too. I was always interested in watching how people make movies, and maybe that's why I do these little videos now. It's not quite the same, but yeah, back then I would go into that store and wait for a customer, a grown-up, to ask to have the Bell and Howell projector demonstrated, because that was like the Cadillac of projectors, Bell and Howell. So, and they did. These, grown-up guys would come in and they would ask to have the Bell and Howell projector demonstrated. And I remember one time the clerk, he turned on the projector and he had a film loaded into it. I think it played 8mm films, pretty sure, or Super 8. Anyway, and he projected a little onto a little screen that he had on the counter there, probably just a piece of paper on a clipboard or something. But he projected the movie, and it was an airplane, a jet, I guess, or an airplane of some sort, landing or taking off at LaGuardia. And I thought that was so cool. I just thought, I want to get a camera, but I could never afford it. I could have saved, if I had been smart. And by the way, I might have told you wrong. It might have been $40 a month. It probably was more like $40 a month, not $40 a week. So, just a little amendment to what I said earlier. So I have these really fond memories. If it was in the winter, the sun would go down early. If it was overcast, it would get dark even earlier than that. So even though I never stayed in the city until nightfall, there were times when I was in the city when the lights were on, and if it was raining, it would be even darker. So that's what I'm drawing from. That's what I'm painting this picture. That's the memory for this painting here. Just to talk about the painting, I didn't have a whole lot to tell you about it. As you could see, everything I was doing. So I'm using gouache, and I'm using the first layer, the first stuff I put down, the purple and the gray and all of that, the sketch part. I was using gouache as watercolor. just kind of washed it in there. And now what I'm doing at this point, I'm using gouache almost as if it's oil paint or acrylic. I'm dabbing into the paint straight out of the tube and trying to channel Leonid Afremov, trying to channel him. So, trying to paint a painting like him. I don't know that I succeeded, but that was the attempt. And I wanted to create something from my memory also. So in the final picture, which I showed you in the opening, in the final picture, it doesn't really look like Times Square. I don't think I really captured Times Square, but I think I captured any city, any urban area at night. I think that's probably what I did. But it started off as wanting to do a memory from that I just told you about. So I do have some poems. One is by Amy Lowell. Amy Lowell wrote a poem called New York at Night. I don't have the whole poem, but I have an excerpt. In the poem, she writes, "The city's street lamps burn through the rain like hot yellow eyes. The roads lie gleaming, an immense asphalt field with long, thin shadows streaming away from the wheels. Blue sky gleams upon the pavement, yellow-green mist among the lamps. The rain falls down the sky, falls from the overhanging branches of trees, and rolls upon the thick, soft ground. But under the lamps it is different. The world is now a water glass, cut by fire, filled with swarming blackness, scored by reflections of yellow light, blue reflections too." So that's an excerpt, and it describes it really nicely. I didn't think to put trees in my painting. I just don't remember trees in Times Square. There probably are some. Isn't that funny? I remember lots of lights. I remember lots of light poles and back then there were lots of cabs, lots of taxi cabs. I think there were a lot of bicycles also. Right now in New York City there's a lot of bicycles. And I think it was the case back then. The only difference is back then you couldn't really just rent a bicycle like you can now. They're all over the place. Let's see if I have another poem here. This one is called The City at Night by Sarah Teasdale. The birds have left the upper air. The winds lie only in the west. And nightly now the autumn stars are rising all in the east. I will lie down and listen long, and never stir but by a sigh, and sleep like sunlight falling there upon a quiet sky, till softly spoken through the fields or heard from other land, the voices of the moving stars come near and take my hand. Yeah, it doesn't really speak to New York City though, or to any city, but I like it. Anyway, so you guys have been so kind. You're writing such complimentary things. I really extend the compliment back to you. I have looked at many of your works on the Facebook page, and there are so many well done paintings and drawings and different styles, and oh my gosh, you guys are really blowing me away with how good you are. I didn't do this channel to be the teacher. I feel like teaching is probably the thing I'm the weakest at. I don't really know how to teach, but I can show you what I do. And if that helps, then it does. And I've learned a lot from you too. I've learned so much. You've taught me about professional grade paint, which I still don't have, I guess. I'm still using student grade. I'm looking forward to trying professional grade. Today, Robin comes home from New York, New Jersey. She's been up there for a week. So she's going to take off today from JFK Airport. I know. That's like 10 miles from where I grew up. In fact, Jamaica Bay is right there. It's funny, right? Jamaica Bay. You think of the Caribbean, but no, it's called Jamaica Bay. And my dad, when he was a teenager, he used to go fishing with his brother. His brother was older than him, and his brother had a boat, so they would go fishing on the water that is now where John F. Kennedy Airport is. The JFK Airport is where they would go fishing. I mean, Jamaica Bay is still there, but a lot of that airport, from what I understand, was built on landfill, and that's where he used to go fishing. Yeah, so Robin is coming home today, which means I have to drive to Tampa in about 5 hours. Yeah, it only takes about 90 minutes to get there. And it's, what is today, Friday? Oh, it's Thursday. So, it shouldn't be too bad traffic, I hope. But I love going to the airport. I love going because you can see everybody so excited. They're either going someplace or coming home. And when you stand by the gate, which is what I'll be doing, and the plane unloads, and all the people get off the plane, and I'll be one of those waiting for the person I came to pick up. You miss a person when they're not with you for a while. I've been missing Robin this week, but she's been having a really, really good time. She went to be with her grandson. Her grandson is 5 years old, and he was in a play. He played the character named LeFou. LeFou from Beauty and the Beast. So she went there with her son and her daughter-in-law. And her daughter, by the way, flew in also. Her daughter lives in Dallas. So that was and that was a surprise. Robin didn't know that her daughter was coming in. She flew in from Dallas just to see the play also with her nephew. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about it when she is back home. Now that she's been a city girl. She's been a city girl for the last week. So what I'm doing now in the painting is I am just basically doing a lot of calculated, I'll use that word, a lot of calculated dots, or almost like pointillism with paint. And I'm just trying to create kind of a composition of dots, a composition of paint marks that creates the illusion that I want to create, which is the city at night. And that would include, of course, people and cars, and I haven't really done them at this point yet, but they will show up eventually. And it's just all from my memory. I really didn't have a reference photo to work from. I just had all these memories, and my memory obviously is not perfect, because if this was truly Times Square, I think at the end of the street there would be a tall building like the New York Times building, right? Where the light, the New Year's Eve light is up on top of that building. I don't think anything's in that building, by the way. I think that building is empty. I think, a few years ago, I think there was a Walgreens at the bottom floor. Maybe that's still there. But I think the rest of the building is empty. It used to be occupied by the newspaper, the New York Times. Before my time, Times Square was called, was it called Longacre? Longacre Square, I think. I don't remember. But it was before my time. And then when the Herald, the New York Herald, named a square after their paper, which is Herald Square, down by Macy's. Yeah, the story that I heard, that was probably too young to know this at the time, but the New York Times decided they wanted a square also, so they renamed Longacre Square or 2 Acre Square. I can't remember what they call it now, what they used to call it, but they renamed it Times Square to keep it up with the Joneses. Just like Gimbel's and Macy's, they would always be rivals and trying to compete with one another during the Christmas season. Macy's became super famous for the store with Santa Claus in it. I think they all had Santa Clauses. Do you know what I remember? Gosh, this is a crazy memory that just came back to me. But I can remember as a kid going into the city, or maybe it wasn't, maybe it was somewhere on Long Island, but we went to see a cow for Christmas. I know, sounds weird, but it was a fake cow. It was like an animatronic cow. I don't know if they used that word back then. But it was purple. It was a purple cow. And you walked into this beautiful, beautiful purple room. And the cow was standing there, and you would tell the cow what you wanted for Christmas. Does anybody remember this but me? I don't know who did that. I wonder if I could look that up. Let me look it up. No, I better not, because I'm recording on the computer. I'm afraid if I start doing anything on the computer, I'm going to mess up the recording. So I'll just keep talking. So this is my attempt to emulate the style of Leonid Afremov. Let me see if I can have some more information about him. Leonid Afremov is a well-known artist commonly referred to by just his first name, Leonid. Born on July 12th, 1955 in Vitebsk, Belarus, Afremov was a Russian-Israeli painter. Now, I don't know, Belarus, I guess, I'm sorry. Vitebsk, Vitebsk, Belarus. That's probably right. He was a Russian-Israeli painter who specialized in vibrant, colorful, and impressionistic works. Yeah, that's what I read earlier. He is best known for his unique style of painting with a palette knife, creating scenes full of color and light, often featuring landscapes, cityscapes, seascapes, and figures in rain-soaked environments. Oh my gosh, I am absolutely being a copycat now of him. I don't think I realized that part. Leonid Afremov's distinctive technique involved applying oil paints with a palette knife instead of traditional brushes, resulting in textured and dynamic surfaces. His paintings are characterized by their vivid colors, emotional depth, and reflective quality, often evoking a sense of nostalgia and serenity. Well, I know I love his work, to be honest. I love the impressionistic approach anyway, whether it's Leonid or Monet or Manet or any of them. Even Van Gogh has a very impressionistic approach to his work. I do like Impressionism. You probably could tell that from the other paintings I've done. Throughout his career, Afremov's work gained a global following, and he sold his art primarily through online platforms. Really? Making his pieces accessible to a wide audience. Well, I didn't know that. See, he's very contemporary. He passed away on August 19th, 2019, but his legacy continues through his vibrant and expressive artwork. Wow. Well, what do you know? I think this painting is too small to have done it with a palette knife, although I should give it a try. I do like making them, the postcards, or the greeting cards. The greeting cards, they go to people, and the people love them. So, who's this one for? This one is mostly for me. There's got to be somebody who I'll hear about. This is how I think God works. God has us do things, and then next thing you know, it's explained why we did them. I have an observation I make all the time. If I go to the bakery, you're going to give away my bad habits, but if I go to the bakery and I buy a cupcake, and I bring that cupcake home, and I eat the cupcake, the thought occurs to me that the person who made that cupcake made it just for me. That cupcake is nobody else's but mine. And that means the baker made it for me. Now, the baker didn't know that he was making it for me, but he made it for me. And when I think about eating anything, an apple, think about an apple. Okay? You have an apple and you're going to have it for lunch. As you bite into it, think about this, that apple grew from a tiny little seed. Well, not the apple itself, but the tree it grew on grew from a seed, and then became a blossom. This particular apple became one blossom, and that one blossom became this one apple. And the whole time it was doing that just for you. That apple grew somewhere in the world just for me. And, the farmer, the guy who grew the apple, he didn't know. He didn't know me, but he did it just for me. And so it's kind of the same way with the cards. Now, sometimes I paint a card and I know exactly who I have in mind for it. But most of the time I don't. Most of the time I paint the cards and put them in a little plastic sleeve and give them to Robin, because we do put them for sale, but I usually give them away before they ever sell. And then we have the prints so people can buy the print. But usually something will happen and I'll hear about somebody, like at church, maybe somebody is going through a hard time, and in this case, let's just imagine there was somebody in New York City, or somebody who was from New York City, or even Detroit. This doesn't have to be New York, this painting. This could be London, right? There's people with umbrellas. Doesn't London have a lot of umbrellas? Just being silly. But the point is that the person who gets the painting didn't know, and neither did I, that it was being made just for him or just for her. And that's true for anything. Whenever you receive something, you receive a card, that person who gave you that card picked it out just for you, or maybe painted it just for you. Even if you sell a card. You sell a card, somebody buys one from you, and they want to give it away to somebody. That person who bought it just for that person, and you unknowingly painted it just for that person. It's kind of fun. Kind of fun to think about the world that way. It's like when a puppy is born, and then it eventually finds a family. That puppy was born just for that family. Maybe the same thing is true for children. I had the best experience of my life when my son was born. It went too quick. He's grown up now and has a son of his own. But being a dad was such a beautiful thing for me. I remember when he was younger, I worked at a radio station, and the radio station closed, so I had no job, and I didn't know what to do. So I decided to go down to the local hotel, the Hilton, and ask the manager if I could sit in the lobby and sketch people for $15 a sketch. And he said yes. To this day, that guy is still a friend of mine, the manager of the hotel. But anyway, he said yes, and I set up my little easel, and I displayed some of my work so people would know how I did. And I had charcoal and paper. And people would sit there, and for $15, and it took me about 15 minutes, I would do a quick sketch of them. Not a what do you call it? Not a caricature, in the sense, technically the word caricature does apply, but you know what I mean. I didn't do the big nose and the big teeth and the little tiny body riding a motorcycle. I just did a portrait of their face. And so they would sit there and I would do that, and that made enough money so that I could continue until I got another job in radio. But I remember going there with Alex. Alex is my son's name, and he would sit there while I sketched. And there were some nights that I did pretty good. Some nights that I made, a lot of money. It's not a bad way to supplement my income, or to have an income at that point. And I remember one day because he loved video games, and I remember one time he was really, really wanting a strategy guide. I guess a strategy guide for him was like having a book of music for me when I was his age back then. So anyway, that particular day, I had a lady come up to me and ask me if I could do a painting, or rather a sketch of, I think it was like 3 or 4 people. And she said, "Then you don't have to do it now. Here's a photograph. I want you to do it from the photograph." So she gave me $50. Now this was probably, I don't know, in the early 2000s, I'm guessing. Yeah, very early 2000s. Anyway, so I got the $50, and I had already made some money that night from some other sketches. So I had plenty of money for a strategy guide for my son. And oh my gosh, it was like giving him a Christmas gift. He was so excited to get it. And I was so happy that I could do that. There's a certain feeling of inadequacy when you don't have the money that the people you love need you to have. So I empathize with anybody who's struggling financially. it's one of the things I think I want to consider when people will say you need to get professional grade paint. Yes, I can afford professional grade paint, but I looked them up. I didn't even know how much they cost. They're not cheap. And a lot of the people who are leaving comments on Facebook, on the group, the Poppa Paints group, you can tell just by the way they write that they're doing the art as a way to give somebody else comfort, as a way to maybe give themselves a little bit of therapy, and just a way to relax. Just a way to relax. And to imply that you're not really doing the best work you could do because you're not spending $144 on a set of paint. I do think that those people are doing well. They're painting beautiful paintings, and yes, I'm sure that the more expensive paint probably does have some better results. I'm not arguing that. I'm just trying to make the point that the people who are painting out there are painting because, as Bob Ross so beautifully said, it's the joy of painting. It's the idea that you are getting some joy out of doing something, and the finished product, the end result, is a gift that you're going to give to somebody. This painting I'm doing here is almost done. I don't know what else I did here. But anyway, thank you for listening, for watching, and excuse me, pardon me for not having the audio on when I originally painted this picture. I know some of you like to listen to the ASMR, the sound of the brush. So I don't know where this is. I thought it was Times Square. This could be Ocala. There's some places in Ocala that kind of look like this at night too. Oh well. And I'm not sure. It looks like it must be a one-way road because it looks like both cars are coming at us. And I forgot to put red on the back of one of them. I guess I could put red on the one on the right. That would look. The one on the left looks like a taxi cab to me. Oh well. That would make sense, right? So enjoy the paintings you're doing, and keep commenting and keep sharing your stuff on the Facebook group. Facebook.com/groups/Poppa Paints, and Poppa is spelled Poppa. That's the way my grandfather's. I called my grandfather Poppa. That's why when my grandson was born, I wanted to be called Poppa. So the last thing I'm doing here is I'm taking some white paint and just brightening some of the pieces of the painting that I think should be more reflective of the light in the background. The light in the background is kind of like this glow that happens at the end of a street in any city, because all the lights converge when you're doing perspective or just looking at perspective. So they all converge and it looks bright. Have you ever landed in a city at night? Like you can see the lights from the airplane. It's an incredible thing. When the light bulb was first invented, who was it, Thomas Edison? I don't think he ever imagined that there would be so many lights in the world. So many lights. And his invention led to other inventions so now we have lights, LEDs, what they call them? So they produce light even with a different technology than the original incandescent light bulbs or fluorescent light bulbs. Now they're all cool, incandescent, just like on the Christmas tree at Christmas time. Well, I'm just putting little touches here and there. The painting is almost done. The video is almost done. And it's almost 8 o'clock in the morning. 10 minutes till 8 o'clock. I got up pretty early today because I have to go to Tampa. Pick up my partner, Robin. So, today's painting is... What am I going to call this, by the way? City at night? I don't know. City night? Night city? City at night. I don't know what I call it. Anyway, it was fun. It was fun to talk about some of those memories. And when I go back to New York, I will probably tell the story again. It's one thing about getting old. You tell the same story that you've told since you were 17. I do. I'm guilty of that. I may have even told some of these stories on this channel before. I hope you don't mind. So, I like the community that we have established here with this channel. I feel like I know some of you. And the Facebook group helps a lot with that. That was the one thing I was missing when I first started the channel. It was kind of hard to really have a community because the only person showing work was me. And I didn't want that to be. I wanted it to be a community where you show your work, I show my work. Before we end, I have a question to ask you. I have been thinking about doing a live video channel, well, not channel, but a live one of them, just one. I don't know if you'd like to do that or not, if you want to paint at the same time. Not paint what I'm painting, I mean just paint anything. In fact, I discourage you from painting what I'm painting. If you want to, that's okay. If it somehow helps you in your learning progress as you progress. But otherwise, so maybe I'll do a live one, and then I'll have to pay attention to the comments. So I'll have to look up at the screen, obviously, to read what you're writing. Oh, what I did here, what I'm doing here, it looks like I'm messing it up, right? I just wanted some dark areas at the top of the sky. I thought it was just too bright all the way up. And so I used that blue as a way to darken it. And it seems to have worked because it dried into it and made it a lot darker at the top than toward the bottom. All right, thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. If you're new, welcome. Please share your work. Remember, there's a Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Poppa Paints, Poppa. And I guess we're done. All right, talk to you later. Bye.